Did you know that LEGO has its own star? Well, yes, LEGO, the largest toy company in the world, has their own star hundreds of light years away, appropriately named the LEGO Star. But why? Is there a strategic reason for this peculiar purchase, or is this just a weird flex to demonstrate their success as a company? Well, let's explore and find out. LEGO certainly does not talk about their star very often. In fact, it's more of a hidden secret about the company rather than public knowledge. Surprisingly, LEGO has only mentioned their star a couple times since the 1990s. Yeah, that's right. As crazy as it may sound, the LEGO Group has actually owned the naming rights to this star since the 1990s. However, despite owning this for so long, very few people have ever heard about the LEGO Star and the story behind its origin. It's a real star. And yes, of course, you can see it in the sky. LEGO got quite lucky with a great positioning for their star in the sky, with the LEGO Star being positioned next to Polaris, which is also commonly referred to as the North Star. Depending on the light pollution in your area, it may be easier or harder for you to spot the star in the sky, but it's certainly up there. But still, the question remains, why did LEGO buy the naming rights to this star? Was it for a marketing stunt? No, not quite. You see, LEGO actually acquired the naming rights to this star in celebration of their 65th anniversary in 1997. But at the same time, LEGO also had a very clever idea to introduce a product inspired by their new star. And so in 1999, LEGO released the LEGO Stargazer watch set. This very unique product revolved around the idea of the intersection of space, time, and creativity. It featured a space-themed LEGO watch face attached to a band consisting of blue, gray, black, and neon yellow links. However, most significantly, this set also included a constellation map to ensure that everyone who purchased this set could correctly identify the LEGO Star in the sky. What an incredibly creative concept. This set was not very common in stores even when it was initially released, which has caused it to be quite rare to find on aftermarket sites such as eBay or Bricklink if you would like to buy it nowadays. You can't go to space without a ship. Wait, did someone just say spaceship? Yeah, I can't talk about LEGO in space without mentioning everyone's favorite plastic astronaut. Benny from the LEGO Movie had a bit of a one-track mind, but that dedication paid off in the long run. On June 24th, 2016, a group of students from Old Dominion University partnered with NASA to send a payload into space on an unmanned Orion rocket. These rockets can launch as high as 200 kilometers, which sounds like a long way up, and to be honest, it is a long way up. But it's only halfway to the International Space Station, but technically that is into space. According to the experts over at NASA, space starts about 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface in an area called the thermosphere. In this part of the atmosphere, temperatures can climb as high as 2,000 degrees Celsius, quite a bit higher than the 105 degrees Celsius that LEGO bricks melt at. Therefore, it was vital that Benny and the sensitive test equipment be fully shielded from the heat. Luckily, NASA has gotten really good at this, and everything was returned safely to Earth. All in all, this was a successful, if uneventful, mission. But I guess that uneventful is exactly what most real-life astronauts hope for. But minifigures have gone much, much further. When the Endeavour space shuttle launched on its final mission into orbit on May 16th of 2011, it was carrying equipment vital for the International Space Station, but that wasn't all. The Endeavour was also carrying some extra cargo, something with no real scientific value, but something to bring a bit of joy to the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. The first ever LEGO sets to go to space. These were part of a long-running educational partnership between LEGO and NASA and tied into several promotional campaigns back here on Earth. The crew of the space station received a model of the ISS and a few simple machines meant to be assembled in microgravity. These were all assembled by Japanese astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, who incidentally became the first person to ever build an entire LEGO set in space. Now, like everything else in space though, he had to take some serious precautions. The sets had to be assembled inside a glove box, a clear plastic container with heavy rubber gloves so that you can work in the box without touching anything. This was necessary to prevent the loss and potential damage by these tiny LEGO bricks aboard the ISS. Satoshi used the model to make educational videos for children before having to disassemble the model for storage. Now, back down on Earth, students could build these same sets and then compare the functioning of simple machines on Earth to how they work in space. Quite an awesome concept. While these were the first complete sets to make it into orbit, LEGO had sent minifigures to the space station a few times before, actually. Back in 2001, the company had sent several alien minifigures from the Life on Mars theme to the ISS. These were later given away as prizes in a contest, and a few are still floating around today. This wasn't, though, the last time that LEGO would grace the ISS. When Denmark's first astronaut Andreas Mogensen made his way to the International Space Station on September 2, 2015, he brought along 20 exclusive LEGO minifigures. These minifigures were later given away on Earth to Danish schoolchildren as prizes in a competition. The space station is certainly pretty far away, but it only scratches the surface of the vastness of space. The furthest humans have ever been from home was during the Apollo missions in the 60s and 70s that encompassed multiple moon landings. Then we just kind of forgot about it for about 50 years. But recently, NASA has been preparing for a return to the moon and launched the new Artemis I rocket in August 2022. Eventually, this ship will return humans to the moon, but the first launch was just to make sure that everything worked properly by sending an unmanned orbiter to the moon and back. Now, while the shuttle had no humans on board, it wasn't completely empty. You see, aboard Artemis I was actually a crew of 4 LEGO minifigures. NASA and LEGO Education celebrated the historic launch by sending the minifigures into space to promote LEGO's new Build to Launch series. 2 of these minifigures, named Kate and Kyle, are from the new LEGO Spike Prime sets, while the other 2, named Julia and Sebastian, are from LEGO City. All 4 of them are wearing unique orange spacesuits, complete with the classic space logo. As a bonus, the Rocket Launch Center set is based on the design of the Artemis system. Overall, this trip took about 6 weeks, and the spacecraft safely returned to Earth on December 11, 2022, which also means that all 4 of the minifigure crew members are safe and sound. That's a crazy journey for a little minifigure. Now, while 6 weeks is certainly a long and difficult journey, it isn't the farthest that LEGO minifigures have gone. In fact, they've beaten humans to not just 1, but 2 other planets. The Spirit exploration rover landed on Mars on January 4, 2004, and was followed by the Opportunity exploration rover on January 25th. These 2 made landfall on the Red Planet with one mission: to study the history of water on Mars. But just because they had a job to do doesn't mean that there was no room for fun. You see, attached to the lander of each explorer, which is the part that actually touches the ground, was a time capsule in the form of a CD. Now, maybe that's a little outdated by now, but it was the best we could do in 2004. This CD contained the names of 4 million people who submitted their details for preservation on an alien world, and the capsules were attached to the lander using Lego bricks. Well, sort of. Apparently, LEGO takes great care not to bring anything to Mars, or anywhere, that has a chance to contaminate the native soil. In fact, they have an entire department dedicated to what they call planetary protection. Also, spaceflight is apparently really hazardous. As durable as LEGO bricks are, they aren't invincible, and the rigors of interplanetary travel would likely cause them to degrade, risking the security of the time capsules. So NASA decided that they would make their own bricks out of space-grade aluminum and screw those onto the rover. Maybe not technically LEGO bricks, but certainly close enough, and they were inspired by LEGO. Additionally, each CD sported a picture of a different minifigure Astrobot Explorer. Spirit carried a picture of Astrobot Biff Starling, while Opportunity had Sandy Stardust. I just love the names that LEGO gives its minifigures. Speaking of names, each of the rovers was actually named through a contest that was run by NASA in conjunction with LEGO and the Planetary Society. Spirit and Opportunity are still on Mars today, though they have sadly stopped working. When they ceased operating in 2018, they had already outlived their expected lifetime by 20 times. Maybe one day we'll go there to grab those Astro minifigures and bring them home. They really do belong in a museum at this point. Moving on, in early 2024, the European Space Agency announced that they were working with LEGO on a new project aimed at creating building bricks from moon dust. Now, to be clear, the goal here is not to create the next big toy, but to experiment with moon rocks as a viable building material. But why? Well, launching things into space is incredibly expensive. For example, the Apollo 11 mission that sent the first humans to the moon in 1969 cost about $355 million, or about $3 billion in today's money. With that kind of astronomical price, sending a bunch of heavy construction materials to the moon simply isn't feasible, and that's where LEGO comes in. In an effort to lower the costs, the ESA has been searching for ways to create building materials directly from the resources available on the moon, which consist mostly of rocks, more rocks, and dust. And while rocks are in fact very good building materials, we don't know a whole lot about moon rocks, specifically as we haven't brought back many, and those that we do have are fairly small. So why did the ESA and LEGO team up? Well, take a look at this absolutely beautiful piece of modern engineering. This 1-to-1 scale brick was 3D printed by ESA scientists to test whether or not moon dust could be pressed and shaped into a brick sturdy enough to build with. In fact, this project was quite the success because these finished bricks can stack just like regular LEGO bricks. Looking up close, it's pretty obvious that it isn't created using the same injection molding process as plastic bricks, but that's the whole point. It's an incredible proof of concept that shows that it is in fact possible to construct bricks from moon rocks when astronauts eventually build on the moon. Now, it's worth mentioning that technically these bricks are meteorite bricks, as the ESA wasn't willing to risk any of the incredibly rare lunar rock samples on this experiment, and so they had to use the next best thing: rock samples taken directly from a 4.5 billion year old meteorite discovered in West Africa in the year 2000. Will this technology ever truly take off? Well, only time will tell. Now, LEGO is constantly trying to create new bricks and has partnered with many companies to make it happen. Back in 2011, NASA launched the Juno spacecraft to measure Jupiter's gravitational and magnetic fields. For 5 long years, this satellite flew through the darkness of space until it finally arrived at the gas giant. While 5 years in space is a very long time, Juno wasn't alone. As it turns out, LEGO had created 3 unique minifigures for this occasion: the Roman god Jupiter, his wife Juno, and the astronomer Galileo, who first observed Jupiter's 4 largest moons. Now, the plastic that LEGO uses is incredibly durable. Well, except brown, but that's another story. But regular plastic bricks simply aren't up to the task of interplanetary travel. To make sure these figures survived, these 3 were made out of space-grade aluminum. As a fun fact, these are actually the most valuable minifigures ever, with an estimated value of over $2 billion. Granted, this number comes from how much it would theoretically cost to fly all the way to Jupiter and collect them. Apparently, they each cost around $5,000 to produce. And while we'll never see these 3 exact ones again, there was a second set made as a backup. However, LEGO has kept their location a closely guarded secret.